Sound 1079.
The Evil Dead. Here being shown to a live audience. The most ferociously original horror film of the year. The ultimate experience in grueling terror. Dare you see this film alone? The Evil Dead.
Welcome to the Horror Report. I'm your host, Dick Champion. Tonight's film is The Evil Dead, which is a 1981 American independent horror film, written and directed by Sam Raimi in his feature debut. It features a cast of unknowns who, like most of his crew, who had worked with Raimi on his short films. Here are some interviews with director Raimi and his leading man, newcomer Bruce Campbell.
There's a film that's being released this week in the Detroit metro area called The Evil Dead. It was released about 3 weeks ago in New York to marvelous reviews. Stephen King, the author of Carrie, says it is the most ferociously original horror film yet to be released this year. And I'm very happy to have as our guest this evening Rob Tappert, the producer of The Evil Dead, and the leading man, Bruce Campbell. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for letting us be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. We've got some stills that I want to show right off because, Bruce, this is going to ruin your image if it isn't yet.
It's okay, I have no image to ruin yet, so don't worry about it.
The first one, it's been used quite a bit in your publicity pieces.
Yeah, because it's so pretty, you mean?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
That picture represents a scene during the climax of the film, where the main fight between the last zombies is taking place, and I'm being dragged across the floor at this point.
Now, I understand that the blood dripping from you is actually a marvelous mixture of Caro syrup, instant coffee, and a lot of cornstarch.
Food coloring.
How many barrels of this did you go through?
Oh, gallons.
Yeah, probably 200 to 300 gallons. We were in Tennessee when we originally started filming. We bought all the Caro syrup and all the red food coloring in the entire town of Morristown, Tennessee.
Now, in Morristown, that might not be a lot, but we bought them out. It's really an interesting mixture. You have to get the right elements or it starts to look too fake, and we couldn't just buy 50 gallons of stage blood. First of all, it doesn't look good enough, and we weren't really into getting, cow's blood or something that, we wanted something that was theatrical because the Caro syrup will stay. It's good for continuity. It'll dry, all you have to do is spray it again, and it'll come right back to living life, so you're all set.
You actually did the shooting of this motion picture it began November 1979, right, for approximately, 3 months in Morristown?
Yeah, it was 3 months in Morristown. Then we got everything we needed to shoot down in the cabin in Tennessee. We came back up here and shot some outdoor stuff in May, and then in August started 3 months of special effects, stop motion special effects in the studio here in town. So it was a very long process of filming. There's a great deal of special effects in the film that just take a long time to do. So we had...
Yes. The next still that we've got, this is one of the ladies, I don't know if you can tell it is Ellen Sandweiss, who portrays what in the movie?
She plays my sister in the film, and she's the first one to get possessed. She's also one of the most horrible demons in the film. At this point, she has to be locked in the cellar. There's a short little cellar with it's got a chain to keep it shut, thank goodness. She gets it first, and she stays in the cellar to torment the ones who are not possessed for a while until somebody else becomes possessed. Then we have 2 zombies basically harassing people. And it gets to be more. There's a total of 5 kids, so there's plenty more zombies yet to go.
She provides a nice comic relief to the movie. She keeps coming out and mimicking what's being said in that. So she provides a certain amount of horrific comedy relief in the
Right, she's mimicking the actors in the film.
Speaking about comedy relief, as I mentioned to you, a friend of mine who had seen the film in New York called me immediately upon getting home and said, you have to see this film. And he described the audience reaction. And he said that even though you're watching the screen and you know that this is a horror film of the utmost, there is an element of comedy where the audience, yeah, they get scared, they get frightened, but then they just kind of sit back and go, and almost a chuckle. He said quite a few times there was just a chuckle that just kind of waved over the audience in terms of comic relief. Did you work at that?
Well, I think anytime you get to such excesses, it starts to get into the area of fantasy and absurdity. We not only had red blood, but we had black blood, we had white blood, we had turquoise blood, because the monsters, we didn't want to confine them just to one color of blood. So that immediately gets it out of the normal realm of reality that we know it. And once you get out of that, I think you can relax a little bit, because I don't think Sam had in mind when he wrote the screenplay that he really wanted to bother people, because it's not a killer on the loose movie. The Evil Dead it's a monster movie, whereby you can't really relate to it 100%, so it doesn't really hit as close to home as some like Killer on the Looses, that sort of thing.
Rob, whose project did this begin as?
It kind of began as a conglomerate, or a finishing up of what was originally a group of us who were making movies together. We'd run them on a college campus, and then we got evicted from where we were staying in college. Decided to...
Can you blame them?
No, I can't blame them. It's 5:30 in the morning, and we're dubbing movies to be shown the next night. But when we were tossed out, we decided, well, it's time to really take the big leap forward. Sam had written a short story, and we had talked to Bruce, who was back in Detroit, about the 3 of us going in, becoming partners, and trying to raise some money on it. And it was kind of a culmination of a lot of different things, and we said, let's go for a feature movie. And there was maybe 9 or 10 guys who we would make movies with, but the 3 of us were the only ones who said, okay, we're willing to really commit to it and go ahead and do it.
At least at that point. At that particular point of starting it, we didn't have any overhead. We had relatively nothing to lose, and we wanted to combine everything that we had kind of learned and apply it.
I've read various reviews, various articles about the movie, and it is more often than not described as a cult feature, and it's beginning as a cult classic. How do you feel about that sort of reference? Had you hoped for something a little more serious?
I don't think we were too concerned with how people accepted it, as long as they're entertained by it. I think that's the most important thing, and I think it was designed. We had made a short, and we had seen how people responded to it, and we knew that audiences needed a little relief after a scene like that. Even in The Exorcist, anytime you finally leave the room with the creature, the audience laughs and murmurs and giggles about what went on, but it's still very horrifying. So we had known that it had the potential to play midnights from early, really even in making it. We said, well, we know it's for this audience. We know people will like it. We know some people will find it humorous, and it'll probably play midnights. If it does well on the midnight circuit, we'll be all the more pleased.
It lends itself to a lot of audience participation.
Kind of like Rocky Horror?
Yeah, because there are some things in the film that the particular audience member wouldn't personally do, like go check this out or go check that out. So they get involved in the film. And that's actually a good sign to us that they're paying attention, because we don't want them to fall asleep or get bored. And because we had sat in a lot of drive-ins when we first started this to see like an Invasion of the Blood Farmers, I Drink Your Blood, I Eat Your Flesh, triple bills of films that would go on, and people in the drive-ins would turn their lights on and honk.
Voyeurs at the drive.
Exactly, but we could see an audience that was, in most cases, relatively displeased. They weren't satisfied. So we wanted to give them something that, we didn't mean to gross them out, but we wanted to keep them involved so that at the end of 90 minutes they could say, oh, well, that was, that went quick.
Sure.
She becomes one of the Evil Dead. She's the very first one. Not necessarily from that scene, though.
Right.
She is the first to go, and she has to be locked into the cellar until she escapes.
Okay. Overall, the plot. This was written by Sam.
Yes, Sam had originally written a short story with one man in the cabin against what's ever out there. And upon reading it, I thought it was a good idea for a feature, but it needed more people in it and more geared at a specific audience. So Sam rewrote it and came up with what is now the Evil Dead. He was very good about it. He kept writing it, giving it to Bruce and I, and we'd hack it all up and say, no. And then we'd argue for days on end. But finally, this is what eventually emerged out of his original short story.
The three of you apparently work very well together. Do you go way back?
I met Sam in high school, second year high school. He was doing a pantomime in our drama class. And it was, for some reason, it was during that one exercise that we both started talking to each other. And Rob, you met Sam kind of a ways back, too.
Yeah, 77.
Yeah.
So
I met him in 75, so there's just a couple years difference. But we've known, and then I met Rob, I think, in 78.
Yeah.
I have to say somewhere around that. So we've all known each other for a good solid, 5 years or so.
And how long has this project taken up as far as your time?
Just about 4 out of the 5. Anyway.
yeah, we've been married together for about 4 years. Quite literally, the three of us. I mean, might as well be joined at the waist because we have spent more time together than any other people. And for 3 people who are partners in a business, I think we survived remarkably well and get along because so many partnerships go on the splits.
Especially that number 3. It's a difficult one. Let's talk about the business end of the movie making industry. Did you make this picture as a commercial film, or did you have art on your mind?
I am not the writer or director, and I believe in Sam's artistic merit to no end, but I think our original decision to make this was commercial. That is, we know that horror films do well. We can make one that is better than 95% of the films that are out there, and it was a way to get into the film business. It's the opening level.
Right, because you can get away with using really nobodies, and you don't have to have classy costumes or shiny cars and all that sort of thing. Plus, it lends itself to one location. If you strand these people, that's it. You don't have to travel. You don't have to go anywhere. Our big expense was going down to Tennessee to shoot there, but it's convenient.
This was your first major project, is that correct?
Yes.
A lot of times when people get committed to these sort of things, they get through halfway or toward the end, they look back on it and say, heck, if I'd known what this was going to be all about, I would have never started. Do you feel that way?
I don't think so, because there was so much more to learn. We would have had to learn that anyway. At some point, you've got to know certain things in order to stay involved in show business, I guess, or the filmmaking end of it. You've got to know how to sell the film, and you've got to know who's going to see the film, and overseas, we didn't know anything about that. There are actual phases of the production that we weren't really aware of, the post-production and sound and things like that, how involved it gets. I don't think we would have given up for anything because we would have had to learn at some point.
As I mentioned, Stephen King has noted the film. There's a buzz about town about it. Why, just yesterday I was at Victor Duncan picking up some tape and equipment and whatnot. Hey, did you hear, the new feature out by Renaissance Pictures? I don't know, you probably have friends there, and that's who they were.
They're friends now. When we returned the equipment, we weren't really real close friends with them. The equipment went through a lot of abuse. There was Karo syrup all over everything.
Really?
Yeah.
This was what was taken down to Tennessee?
Yeah, and we brought it back to Victor Duncan, and they said, is this our camera, the same camera? We're friends now. But I guess we were pleased that people know about it.
They banned us. They said, you will not rent equipment from us ever again unless you bring... And then they kind of went back on it after we pleaded. They said, okay, if you take a crew...
Pleaded with a capital P.
Yeah.
Yes. In the Capitol Green,
right.
I'm sure.
Exactly. Take people we say are okay to handle all the equipment, then we'll let you. We had a little accident. About 75 gallons of sticky Caro syrup got dumped on a camera when a special effect went wrong a little bit early. And that caused a great deal of heartache. Also, they took a camera apart, went to put it back together, nothing would fit back together. So they're saying, this is a $36,000 camera, you've ruined it, it won't go back together, what are you going to do about it? Well, we'll pay the $500 deductible on the insurance and that, so.
That's about it.
Yeah, they weren't too happy to see us. Now we're the best of friends.
Good. You made the film for just under $500,000, which, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but if you're familiar with the film business, you know it's a drop in the bucket. There's a new breed of independent film producers that are coming along these past few years that have been making critically acclaimed motion pictures for that sort of budget. Would you like to think of yourself in with that breed? I mean, we're talking about John Sayles, you know, some of the others. Do you consider yourself in that category?
There are certain similarities, I guess, is that when you're operating with such a low budget, you've really got to work hard, and I think somehow that reflects on the actual film, because there have been a lot of first efforts that are really out and out good films that are entertaining and exciting, but then when you get into the second and third, they have a little more money to play with. Sometimes maybe they relax, so I don't know. Being low budget is certainly a way of keeping you on your toes.
And in the horror films, the classic horror film, Texas Chainsaw, Tobe Hooper's first film, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, his first film, it seems like the first films of people tend to be more the classics than their subsequent film, because whatever dedication and energy they put into that first project that made it what it was, is they lose it on the second film. Hopefully we won't lose ours.
The hungry look.
Yeah, the hungry look. We had that for this project.
You can't lose that.
No.
No. Who are some of your favorite filmmakers, contemporary or?
Spielberg.
Yeah.
John Huston was great. Robert Weiss. There's filmmakers. There's thousands of them that I like even.
Do you see anyone in particular that Sam has perhaps picked out and is perhaps influenced by more than others in terms of writing, directing?
Oh, I think Sam is a fan of Spielberg.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of, he tries to get something really exciting and something that is special or out of the ordinary that you wouldn't normally see. Style-wise, I wouldn't do that to Sam and put him in any kind of category. I think Alfred Hitchcock. I think Hitchcock has been a big influence on mystery, not necessarily science fiction, but horror and that sort of dark side of people's thoughts, I guess.
Have you been film students all along, or is this something that you just wanted to do, and between the three of you, you pooled your resources, your talents, and you came up with this film? Some people, you know, go through the graduate school of film. They study different filmmakers, different techniques, different styles, and they still can't get it down on the celluloid. Did you approach it any differently, with maybe a little more spontaneity?
Probably. None of us were in filmmaking. None of us Sam had one class in filmmaking. He was studying basically English literature and writing. Bruce was studying acting and then working back here in Detroit in commercial production, and I was studying economics up at school. And we kind of nicely filled in all the gaps the others had, so that worked very well.
We were previous graduates of the Kodak School of Super 8, I think, because it's so cheap to make a Super 8 movie, but you can kind of fake a real movie because you can use scores from the best, the best movies, from Jaws and from Close Encounters, because they have the best music. They really do. And in Super 8, since you can't market it, you're just showing it to people, it's okay to use that music, and you can tell the same story in Super 8. And we raised the money based on a half-hour Super 8 movie, so as opposed to doing something in 16 where you're starting to get into some really serious costs. So that was really a background. You know, we shot, most of them have been slapstick comedies before.
Toro.
Stuff like that, you know. Oh, heck, I don't know. There have been war films, detective films. Sam made a feature-length film in Super 8 called It's Murder.
It bombed. I was a projectionist with Sam on it and the ticket taker. And they said ever tough, that the audience in that film, they did not laugh for the first 40 minutes of the movie.
And it only lasted 41.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you just couldn't get out of the theater fast enough.
Bruce, I'm curious about you. You are an actor. It is very unusual for an actor at this early stage in their career to be involved in a business partnership in a production, such as you are. Do you find this is going to limit you in the future, or do you think it's more advantageous?
It'll limit me in the sense that I guess if I am not out pounding on doors to get acting jobs, then I'll be making films. So from an acting point of view, I guess I'm not out playing that field quite as much. But the same sense, being from Detroit, they really don't have auditions for feature films every 2 weeks, as they do in the major cities, Los Angeles or New York. And it's kind of forced us, anyone who wants to make a feature film in Detroit, whether they're an actor or an electrician or whatever, they've got to be involved in it to the point where it comes out. So in order for me, I guess, to really promote acting, you got to be involved in the production of it. You're also more involved in the filmmaking, so maybe I can suggest to the sound editor, well, when my head's getting smashed against this wall, let's put a real good sound effect in there. As opposed to if I had just stopped in, so I would have said, gee, this is neat, how you doing all this stuff?
Yeah.
It's a lot more insight into it. It doesn't make me act any better. I guess that's up to me, but it's an interesting situation.
Knowledge can't hurt.
I don't think so, because I think that helps an actor be technically aware of what's going on, how to hit marks and how to do this, and so that in the cutting room, if they're involved in all the cutting, only on a suggestion level, they can see where their mistakes are. I mean, I can see where my glaring mistakes are all through the film, and the problem with film is that you're stuck. If you do something good, it's great forever. If you do something low budget, then you're stuck forever.
It's there. We've got
tastefully.
The film opened in New York.
Yeah.
Did you go to the opening?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was going through your mind? I mean, this is the excitement of a lifetime. Really. I mean, isn't this what you opening in New York? I mean, it doesn't matter that it wasn't a 30-seat theater, which it wasn't.
Well, it was sheer panic, and we had actually seen it in a theater with 3,000 people in Paris, and they were the best audience in the world. There's no theaters that large in New York. There was about 1,600 in the Rivoli on the opening night. It sold out all night, and at first it's sheer panic, and then you're just overjoyed as the movie goes on and the people are really into it. It was a blast.
If you're doing a play or something, you're worried about whether the actors are going to trip over something, or whether the props will be there. With a film, that's all taken care of for you. So that's it. You just have to worry if the projectionist is on his toes and all that stuff. Oh, incidentally, on behalf of Robert, myself, and Sam Raimi, and from everyone who worked on The Evil Dead, I would like to present you with an official I bled for the Evil Dead button, meaning that you put your time and effort into this wacky movie that's coming out.
This is wonderful. Can I get a close-up of this? Here, I'm going to put it right
just to show
here.
that you bled for the Evil Dead.
I bled for the Evil Dead. Isn't that great?
I think anyone who sees the film will agree that they also bled for the Evil Dead.
Is this part of the marketing strategy?
Yes, it was. It was for the blood banks that we got outside New York theaters to give. If you gave blood, you got a button and free passes to go into the movie. So we tied in with the American Blood Donor Society to do our share to replenishing
to replace all the blood that we use for the Evil Dead, basically.
Have you been responsible for all the active publicity in terms of marketing? Usually separate agency is hired to do that.
Right.
In this sort of low budget film, have you been directly responsible with the brainstorming?
Well, I think so, at least in the initial stages, because we came up with the original poster. Whether it stunk or not, that's besides the point. We came up with what stills to use. We came up with what kind of initial ad. So yeah, we were pretty involved.
They then brought in PR people to help us get different things, but the original concepts and a lot of the things they use, we've given to them to use.
Right.
So.
Can we see you stay in New York, or are you going to zoom off to, stay in Detroit, or are you going to zoom off to New York or Los Angeles with this newfound success?
The next film, The XYZ Murders, takes place here in Detroit. Takes place in the heart of Detroit, so we'll be here for a while.
Great, great. We're looking forward to it. Can you estimate a release for that one?
Fall of '80, a year and a half.
Okay, great. The Evil Dead, it's showing now and probably will be for the next 3 to 4 weeks in area theaters. Do go see it. It's a great film. You'll enjoy it. And I'm Cynthia Pancala, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Rob, how did you raise the money for Evil Dead?
Sam Raimi, the director, and myself and Bruce Campbell have a company, Renaissance Pictures, out of Detroit. And we had a short film that we had made, a condensed version of Evil Dead that had some of the scares in it. We went to different doctors and dentists and lawyers and to their homes, and we'd set up our little Super 8 projector and screen and get their whole family and friends to come and see this little horror film we made. And in the process, we'd terrify their family, make their kids unable to sleep all night. And enough people, after enough banging on enough doors, finally said, yeah, you seem to be at least honest, and your horror film worked. I can't imagine why people would pay to go see it. These are people who aren't in the film business, have nothing, really know nothing about it except what they see on TV. So from that, we were able to raise money. It took a long time. It was a never-ending process because we quickly ran out of people who saw the novelty of putting money in the movie business, especially in Detroit where the car business is falling apart. No one's working. So
taking the film on the horror circuit to the festivals, maybe talk a little bit about that process.
Well, we've been very, very fortunate with Evil Dead so far, because there's so many pitfalls in filmmaking that you can come across and fall into at every turn. And we've been very fortunate that we've made the right decisions a lot of times. And one of them was to go with an agent to handle our overseas and our domestic sales, who we've been very happy with. And he's kind of put us in touch. One, he's a very, very good, very well-known agent, Irving Shapiro, and he's put us in touch with different festivals that would be interested with this picture. And the festival people know of Irving and what he handles, George Romero's pictures, and just a great range of pictures. So they know of him, so they contact him to see what he has. And we've gone to numerous different festivals over in Europe and that, and those that have been horror competitions, we've been very fortunate. The people have liked it. The juries have either liked it or absolutely hated it. There seems to be, on the critical spectrum, a very wide split. Either they like it or they hate it. So we've been fortunate enough to win some awards at the different festivals. We won in Sitges, the Best Picture and Best Special Effects. And it's kind of nice going to overseas countries where they treat you like royalty. As these great American filmmakers at the age of 23 and 25, it's kind of fun.
Why did you choose to shoot the film in Tennessee?
We went down to Tennessee to shoot the film because down there we could feed people grits the entire time, and it was very, very small food cost. No, actually, we went down to Tennessee because we thought it would snow in Michigan. And so as our shooting schedule got pushed back farther and farther, we kept going farther and farther south. And finally, we went down to Tennessee because they had a good film commission that gave us a bridge to destroy and found us a cabin, which eventually fell through and stuck us in a reconverted barn. But everything worked out very well. We were glad we went down to Tennessee. Plus, labor costs are very cheap. Electricians are $3 an hour. It was a nice place to go and shoot for that reason. It was very inexpensive as far as not technical people, but electricians and helpers and those kind of things. Even equipment, construction equipment, which you need for different things, was relatively inexpensive.
Any union hassles at all?
No. They don't like new unions down here. Hell, we drive them out of here. This is a right-to-work state. So, yeah, that's very nice. There's a very independent attitude. There's a big filmmaker in North Carolina, Earl Owensby, who's always making films, and he likes it down there because of the same reasons. It's an inexpensive place to make movies.
Now the picture is playing in England, Europe. Could you maybe just detail where it's playing, right? Overseas?
Well, it depends on when this is aired, but yes, the picture is playing in London and in Paris, and New Line Cinema is going to be opening it here in the States, in Canada. We're looking forward to this, to our big opening in the States. It's a little odd that the picture was received much better overseas initially. There was a great deal of excitement in France and in London over the movie. And here it was just another run-of-the-mill horror films. It seems like the Europeans caught on faster that it's not another, at least slash 'em and stalk 'em picture. So,
anything else you want to? Maybe we say if you say New Line Cinema is releasing the film.
Just a second. Okay.
New Line Cinema is releasing the picture here in the States. It'll be in a theater near you very, very soon.
Okay. Okay. Which Ira? Which we can use that if
clip of The Evil Dead, which is being released by New Line Cinema. It opened this past Friday, and as we said before, it is absolutely an amazing film for those of you who enjoy horror films, fright films, which really go for the gut. And this one really goes for the gut. And once it has the gut, it pulls it out here, through the mouth, the ears, everywhere. No, you are really going to love this film, and we're going to start right now with a gruesome, terrifying clip from The Evil Dead. I want you to take a look at this, and when we come back, we're going to be talking with the writer and director of The Evil Dead, Sam Raimi. Right now, watch those sets. That, of course, was a clip from The Evil Dead, which has just opened this past Friday. It has broken in 80 theaters around the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area, and I'm willing to bet it's doing fantastic business. And with us right now is the writer and director of The New Dead, Sam Raimi. Sam, thanks very much for being a guest.
It's a great honor to be on Movie Mania.
Well, I don't know about that. Sam hasn't seen the show before, folks, but we're very glad that you're here, and we're very excited, being as we are, as our viewers know, very partial to those people who have made outstanding independent productions. And The Evil Dead started, I understand, as something which was really a labor of love and of humble beginnings.
Yeah, my partner is Bruce Campbell, who stars in the film, and Robert Tappert, the producer, are all from Detroit. And we had a film society, a Super 8 movie society, and we pooled our finances and would make Super 8 films. And then we decided to take the big step and make a feature film. So we went around door to door and bit by bit, painfully raised the money for the thing. So it really was a totally independent picture.
Now, The Evil Dead was originally, was it not, a short film made in Super 8, wasn't it, before you springboarded into 16?
Right. What we did was we shot a Super 8 version of the thing, and it was a half-hour long. And the reason we did this was because we had no track record in the film industry, and we had to raise money for the film. So we shot a 30-minute version of it entitled Within the Woods. And this we took around to private individuals' houses, doctors, dentists, lawyers, and we'd show it at a dinner party, make them sick, and then they'd invest in the movie usually. And this all took place in Detroit.
Did that work? Did they mostly invest after they got sick?
Yeah, I'd say about one out of... When you could get into their house, really, with your Super 8 projector and the business suit and the matching briefcases, it worked 1 out of 2 times, really. Tough part is getting in their house.
Oh.
I suggest the window, though, because they aren't usually watching.
Yeah, that always is. We've had trouble getting in houses, too, before. By the way, give me that television at this. No, what we... The Evil Dead, for those who haven't seen it, and as those of you who have seen it already know, has some absolutely phenomenal special effects. Really terrific special effects. And I'm wondering, as your first project, as independent filmmakers, why you chose something which would obviously be so much work in the way of effects, not only in during the shooting, but in post-production as well.
Well, to tell you the truth, we didn't know it would be so much work. Otherwise, maybe we would have done it a different way. But we had done them before in the Super 8, and it got to the point where our special effects man working with us were able to basically deal with the situation. So once we got past the initial hurdle of Within the Woods, the 30-minute version of it, it was just a question of more quantity and trying to increase the quality. But basically, I think we had this system down, and so it became a lot easier. Actually making the film. It wasn't quite as hard as many people believe. In our case, since we didn't have intricate optical effects and they were mostly mechanical effects, they were the type of things either they work initially or they don't. So we had a pretty high rate of success in most of them.
Well, I can testify to that because the effects were very successful, very horrifying, and The Evil Dead really is a film that it goes for you. That remark I made earlier about going for the guts is really true. It's really a shocking, terrifying film, and there's a great deal of craft and really skillful movie making involved there. For that, we congratulate you. How long did it take you to get it going? Once you actually got under production, how long did it take to shoot?
Well, we shot mainly in Tennessee. Tennessee Film Commission put us in touch with all the locations, a bridge we could destroy, zombies we could rent, and that took about 3 months down there. And then we went back up to Detroit, and in a small studio, a basement, we shot most of the special effects sequences. They were shot by Tom Sullivan and Bart Pierce, who really are some dynamo special effects men. Then we shot a few weeks up in northern Michigan, just some chasing through the woods sequences. They have much better trees up north.
Do they?
Yeah, you get those big oaks, and it's just a different really variety than they have in Tennessee.
So altogether?
Altogether, 3 months Tennessee, I'd say about 4 months of actual shooting.
Which is actually quite a lengthy schedule for an independent production working with a limited budget.
That's really true. However, since we didn't pay anybody, it wasn't so bad.
Well, we can testify to that being efficient, as our crew knows very well.
Well, that's very logical with this crew, though. But
well, this is really an ace crew. This is really the crack crew of anybody who's visited our glamorous studios in Midtown Manhattan here. They know what kind of personnel that we're working with. Sam, why don't we? I think it's about. Can we run another clip now? Let's see another clip. This is again The Evil Dead. It's around 80 theaters in this area. It is at a theater near you, and we advise you, run, don't walk to see this. And just in case you need any more inducement, here it is. Well, Bruce, I want to tell you that was a very good... Bruce?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Ed.
It's only a half-hour show.
Oh, okay.
This handsome young gentleman sitting over to my left is Bruce Campbell, who is the actor that you just saw drenched with blood in that clip. And he is the star. That's right, you get top billing in The Evil Dead.
Somebody's got to.
Well, I won't say that may or may not have been influenced by the fact that Bruce is also an associate producer on the film and one of the three.
We don't talk about that.
Okay. Well, at any rate, he's one of the three partners, another of the young gentlemen from Detroit who have made what is got to go down as the most terrifying shocker of the year. I think it's safe to say. Bruce, as an actor, as someone who had to be in front of the camera and really cope with a lot of the special effects, was The Evil Dead really tough for you to do? Did you feel at some point you said, God, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get drenched with blood again. I want to go home and take a shower and forget it.
There is a lawsuit pending.
There is?
No. Well, we've gotten over that. Yeah, it was a little, physically it was tough. You know, you do maybe 10 takes or something, and the first one was the best, you know. But you don't really know that till editing. So you have to just keep doing it. No matter how many times they drench you with Caro syrup or with whatever, or with dog food, doesn't really matter.
Is that what some of that is?
At the end, there was a little bit of Alpo involved there, yeah.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, I'll tell you, I didn't know what it was, because by that time I was looking like this. I didn't know what to do.
So was I, to block the Alpo from hitting my face, but that's okay.
Were you involved in the project since from the beginning, from Within the Woods?
Since its inception, yeah. I played the monster in Within the Woods. I paid my dues, and they let me be the good guy.
Which monster?
Well, we only had, in Within the Woods, the Super 8 thing that we used to raise the money.
Right.
There was one main monster, who terrorized one of the girls in the film who is now a monster.
Right.
So that was early experimentations, and you know, we tried it with a woman heroine for the short, and then decided to try it with a man heroine, as opposed to a woman screaming and carrying on through the whole film.
Now, in a lot of these films, there usually is a solitary woman at the end.
Sure.
What made you decide to go?
Well, it was a tough decision, because actually a woman screaming is a really important part of a soundtrack, of a woman screaming all the way through a horror film, or halfway through when things get going. But with a man screaming all the way through, it can be a little tough. People say, well, kill the guy, he's a loser. Or you can kind of make it intermittent screaming. I scream in the film, but only when things get pretty rough. So that when without trying to sound chauvinistic, when a man screams, it's maybe pretty bad, depending on what man you're dealing with.
Right.
I kind of go from being a wimp to less of a wimp, to a survivor. Because there's another character in the film who's a pretty capable guy, but he turns out to kind of be a deserter.
He was also obnoxious too. I was rooting for. As a matter of fact, I thought he was gonna buy the farm 10 minutes before he did.
Oh, really?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, it was there's always, in one of these pictures, there's always somebody, don't be such a baby, and he's going to get it. He's going to open the closet door, and it's going to be something right through the throat, and he got it through the throat and the eyes and then everything else. Horror films, especially horror films that have a lot of gore, a lot of blood, have often, in recent years, come under criticism, saying that you don't need all that to shock an audience. You don't need all that to get a visceral reaction. Now, what is your response to that?
Go see Evil Dead. Second of all, I would say that when we first started to do this film, the three of us sat in drive-in after drive-in after drive-in going, watching things that were what we thought unwatchable. And the audience felt the same way. They'd turn their lights on and honk their horns at the lousy parts, the boring parts. So we thought, well, if we're going to tell people it's a horror film, let's make it a horror film. There's basically no obscenities in the film. There's fleeting, sideways nudity, not even full frontal nudity.
Right.
The emphasis is strictly on horror, because we've seen too many shows where a guy's just waiting to put his arm around his girlfriend, but he never gets to do it.
Right.
The guy never gets to protect his girlfriend, or she never gets to bury her head in his shoulders, I seriously, we've watched that, really feeling bad for the audience. So we're not trying to gross them out. We're not trying to. It wasn't. Well, let's just put more gore in. Let's just make it gorier. It wasn't so much gore. It's let's try and make it scarier. Gore is partially an element of it, but it's not meant to be personally insulting. It's taken beyond that, so that it's more into fantasy, that sort of thing. Because,
by the way,
it's a monster movie.
It is. It is that. And we should add that there is no MPAA rating on this film, right? There's no RX rating.
No, they liked it too much.
They liked it. Jack Valenti is a personal friend of ours.
Yeah.
We're doing that, are we? And there is a notice on the posters saying that the producers recommend that no one under the age of 17 be allowed to see this film. Now, we know that is not going to stop some of the more rabid movie maniacs who are out
Mainly,
there.
I think it's because we don't want to kid the audience into what they're getting into. Because we want to tell them that it is what it is, that what we are advertising is what it is, because a lot of advertisements try just to get the people in the theater, and from that point they don't care. We're trying to tell them this is what it is. Go see it if you want to see it.
Well, that's admirable, and that's something that more producers should go for. When you were sitting in the drive-ins watching all those horror movies, what was your favorite? Either favorite good or favorite bad?
I think my favorite bad probably would be like Invasion of the Blood Farm or something like that.
Invasion of the Blood Farm.
Meat Cleaver Massacre, where there was no meat cleaver in the entire film.
We didn't see that.
It's a classic.
Was that released?
It makes sense that you wouldn't have seen it, but and my favorites are like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I guess, because it kept going. Once it started, it had a certain amount of opening and setup, but once it started, that's it. No reason to go out and get more popcorn here. The show is going, and it's going till it's done. I like that, where you're involved in it. Because at a drive-in, people are sort of there to see the film and sort of not.
Do other things, yeah.
But you kind of want them to see the film if they're there. They paid their money. That's standard entertainment theory, you know. I don't think we're trying to do anything different. It's just we're trying to be true to our audience, I think.
Sure.
They pay to get in. I pay to get in.
I didn't pay to get in, but I would have. Sam, let me ask you.
You can pay me now if you want.
Oh, no, wait a minute. We'll do that after the show. Sam, just stay there, but what was your favorite of... that's all right, I'll repeat it. What was your favorite?
My favorite was a horror movie. I
Yeah.
have to say it was The Haunting.
The Haunting was Sam Raimi's favorite of the films. Well, that's something you saw before, I guess, before you had any considered
But
The Evil Dead.
I do have a message for the viewers of Movie Mania.
There is a message for Movie Mania. Hang on.
It's a plug, really.
Uh-huh.
Plug the picture, but in a Movie Mania spirited kind of a way.
Yes.
And that is, it's a rock'em,
It's a rock'em sock'em
roller coaster ride
roller coaster. Oh!
of screaming horror. And we highly recommend it to all the movie maniacs out there.
It's a rock'em sock'em roller coaster ride of
Screaming horror.
horror.
That you would recommend.
Highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
Highly recommended.
To who? All the movie maniacs.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the co-producer, writer, and director, speaking off camera, Sam Raimi. And what can we say? We can't add anything
What more
to
can
that.
a fella say?
We couldn't possibly anything. Oh, we're going to run yet another clip from The Evil Dead. You'll have to forgive us if this seems a little rougher than our usual shows. It's been a long time. We've been in layoff for a number of months. Relax, take it easy.
And you're
You'd
some very important company here.
And that's right. Well, I'm a little shaky, I have to admit. But we're going to watch yet another clip of The Evil Dead, which is playing at one of 80 theaters in this area. And if you haven't already seen it, by all means do. We'll be back to chat a little more with the star of Evil Dead, Bruce Campbell, after this clip. Rivet yourself to that set. That again was Bruce Campbell, star of The Evil Dead, in one of the horrific, there's a word that you don't hear too much except when you're talking about horrific scenes of this picture. You got a notice, an article that was written by a very famous horror film aficionado.
Mr. Stephen King.
Mr. Stephen King. Where did that appear?
That appeared in Twilight Zone magazine. And it was very generous of him to do that. He saw the film at Cannes, at the festival out there in France, and apparently he liked it, and we found out that he was interested in endorsing it somehow. And we, of course, we thought about it for about half a second and said that would be great. And that one quote of his has helped immensely in helping to legitimize the picture, because horror films in general are kind of fighting that sometimes.
Sure.
Because they're not really on the ladder of pictures, they're a little on the lower side, so it's really helped a lot, and we greatly appreciate that. I think we owe him a lot.
Well, it wasn't all that long ago, although I guess it is already more than a decade ago that little film came along made by some gentleman from Pennsylvania, Night of the Living Dead, and that's turned into a real classic.
Right.
And we hope you'll have the same luck with The Evil Dead.
Thanks very much.
Bruce, thanks very much for being with us. Bruce Campbell, the star, associate producer of The Evil Dead, and we also want to thank Sam Raimi, who co-producer, writer, and director. Again, we remind you, if you like horror films, and we know there's a lot of you out there, and you go for the real gory stuff, if you're the type of guy, for instance, that wanders around Manhattan looking for copies of the Gore Gazette, you are going to love this picture. We recommend that you go see it right now. It's in plenty of theaters. There's no, you can't possibly say that, well, it's not playing anywhere near my house. That's a lie. Go see it.
I know it doesn't look very glamorous, but I'm talking to you from dab smack in the middle of one of Hollywood's biggest studios, Universal. And lurking somewhere behind me in one of these unattractive-looking trailers is the creative force behind one of the most successful low-budget horror movies of recent years, The Evil Dead, and its imaginatively titled sequel, The Evil Dead 2, Mr. Sam Raimi.
Say, I was just wondering, do they have blood banks in England?
No.
but they have a Liverpool.
When The Evil Dead was released in 1982, it attracted rave reviews. Stephen King called it the most ferociously original horror film of the year. Yet the film had initially been turned down by every American distributor who had seen it. The Evil Dead was an independent production, financed by a group of doctors, lawyers and dentists from America's Midwest, and it marked the feature film debut of writer and director Sam Raimi, who remarkably was only 19 at the time.
There are two schools of thought, I think, for horror filmmakers. One is that the audience can always create something more horrible than you can show them. And the other school of thought is show them, everything. And I believe that both is true. I believe the audience can come up with something more horrible in their minds than I can show them, provided they're given the raw materials to construct something. And I also believe that I have got some pretty horrible things to show myself, so I try and mix and match. I try and scare them and weird them out with visuals, and I try and leave room for them to add their own ingredients to create.
Although this was his first feature, Sam had already directed a handful of Super 8 movies, which had given him the chance to develop a distinctive and confident style. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started in filmmaking in the first place? What kind of movies were you making before The Evil Dead?
Before The Evil Dead, my friends and myself, just a group of school chums, and I would make Super 8 comedies, Three Stooges comedies.
There was a nucleus of about 6 of us who had this interest, and we all were split apart in different neighborhoods. We had a little neighborhood here, and Sam was over in his little neighborhood making Super 8 movies. Sam did a lot of magic, and so film seemed like a natural extension for him to do that. And so he was doing these silly little movies, and I was doing silly little movies. And another guy, Scott Spiegel, who co-wrote Evil Dead 2, was making like Three Stooge rip-offs, where he'd use the actual soundtrack but put in his own visuals. And then we kind of all hooked up in high school, and then we found that, you know, one guy had costumes and another guy had a good camera. So we combined all of our facilities, and then we were able to, on weekends, we just would go out and shoot.
Bruce Campbell starred in every Super 8 movie that we made because, very simply, he was the good-looking one and still is. So we said, the girls like you, we'll put you in front of the camera. The girls don't like us, we'll stay behind the camera. And only when Bruce was unavailable would we put ourselves in front of the camera.
But you show some raw acting ability in those. Why didn't you stay in front more? Why did you choose to direct?
I don't think I showed any acting ability, and I stick my face in any movie that I can, truthfully, shamelessly, to get my mug on the screen.
Why are the Three Stooges such an influence on you? What do you like about them?
I like their physical comedy and their sound effects. You know, the hyper-real shticks that they do, and they just make me laugh. They just make me laugh, and I've seen them make big audiences laugh in the theaters.
Tell us about 6 Months to Live. That's not a Three Stooges plot, is it?
It's Three Stooge-like. And certainly we've ripped off, stolen blatantly, as 16-year-olds, many Three Stooges gags and did them ourselves. So it was greatly influenced by the Three Stooges.
So where would you show these films? In classrooms and at home? Or?
Yes, exactly. To the other students.
Would you charge money?
Sure. As much as we could get. Usually a quarter.
Sam and I first decided to do a horror film after doing research on what pictures did well in the markets. And at the time, which was the late 70s, there were still a lot of drive-ins, especially in the Midwest where we grew up. And there were forever horror films playing in the drive-ins on double bills and that, which we always saw and said, God, we can make something better than this. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So up until the time we decided to make a feature film, we had done mainly comedies and decided that horror is the entry level that most people use, and decided to make the ultimate experience in horror at the time.
Robert Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself all bought business suits and matching briefcases and dropped out of school. Then we worked as waiters, busboys, janitors, cab drivers.
So how old were you then?
18. and Bruce was 19 and Robert was 22 at the time.
We would sit down and pretend that we were businessmen. That was all part of the filmmaking process. We thought we had to do it because it never occurred to us to go to California because it was 3,000 miles away. And we thought we'd have as good a chance raising money independently, and it finally worked.
We first got jobs so that we could raise seed money. Then we hired attorneys to put together a legal offering saying, in legal terms, if X person invests X amount of money, they own X percentage in this movie that we're going to make. We then made a Super 8 movie called Within the Woods. And this was a small version of the screenplay I had written for Evil Dead. The reason we made this picture was to show the potential investors that these kids, us, that we could make a picture that worked, a horror movie that actually could scare them. I mean, that was our goal, at least. I hope it scared them. We wanted to have a terrible creature, a spirit, something that floated through the woods at a different height than we're used to seeing things. So we used a shaky cam. We came up with a board where we mounted the camera in the middle, and the lens acted as the axis point, and it's ended up smoothing out the point of view because the longer the board was that the camera was mounted on, the jiggle, this effect. Well, cinema verite there. Decreased proportionate to the length of the board. So it gave us a very eerily smooth look, and it seemed to work out okay.
Within the Woods was made as the bait for potential investors, but the tricky part was to get them to watch it.
What we did was we would call them and say, yes, we're a friend of Dr. Perkinson's, and he has given us your name and said that although he could not invest, you might be able to. Well, I certainly can invest. I can't invest. I won't have anything to do with you. Well, why don't you let us come by your house and show you our picture Within the Woods and see if you might be interested after that. Well, I'm not really interested. Well, we'll be by around 8 o'clock. So we'd kind of force our way in and get the foot in the door. Then we'd set up our Super 8 projector and show the movies on his dining room wall, take down some art, and proceed to make them sick, and then hopefully get the investment out of them.
We had dentists, a couple of dentists go in. We had some real estate people. But it was tough to get people who had money who were merchants, who owned stores, because a lot of those people had money, and we would approach them. They're used to paying money and getting heads of lettuce or bottles of wine, and we wanted them to give us money for nothing for this movie that might be successful, might not. And I remember we showed this first little Super 8 movie in the detergent aisle of a grocery store after it closed to a couple of merchants, and they didn't invest. But we really went to absolutely anybody who was financially capable of losing all their money.
Their perseverance paid off. After dozens of private screenings, they finally raised $90,000 and The Evil Dead got underway. It's got all the ingredients of a classic horror film. 5 teenagers, a deserted log cabin, a car that won't start, a thunderstorm, and a tape recorder with a mysterious message.
Shut it off. Shut it off.
I was the pseudo-hero, Ash, who was really just one of 5 generic people at the beginning, and then through a trial by fire, I kind of wise up a little bit and live.
Why pseudo-hero?
Because he's kind of an idiot. You know, if he hears a sound, he goes outside. He looks through doors that you know he shouldn't, so he's not really very smart.
But then that's the staple of horror movies.
Oh, you have to. If they were smart enough not to go to the cabin, you wouldn't have a movie. So, you know, they show up and it's a creepy place. Well, let's go in. You know, and they found a tape recorder with some weird sayings on it. Oh, that sounds great. Let's play that. You know, and then people are possessed and like, oh, what do we do now? And you can't be too smart the first couple of times, so you let some monsters kill some innocent people.
Did you feel under a lot of pressure while you were shooting it?
Yes, I felt under great pressure. And it was not artistic pressure, it was all financial pressure, because there were no expectations on me as a kid. It was all a question of, I have $90,000 of these people's money who I promised I would make a good movie out of. This has got to be good. It's strange, but that's where I was coming from back then.
So what do you think would have happened if the movie hadn't been a hit?
Well, then I would be selling air conditioners again, which I'm pretty good at. You see this little baby that'll put out 200 BTUs. It'll cool a room basically 20 by 40, and if you want to blow it around with a fan, I got that too. Sell air conditioners was terrible.
So did they make the money back?
In fact, on Evil Dead #1, we've returned to the investors about 3.5 times our original investment.
How much control did they exercise over the movie? Did they keep in touch and keep an eye on how things were going?
No, they were very good to us, actually, the investors. They never hassled us. We would give them a bi-weekly letter to tell them where we were and what was going on. At this point, the picture is in editing, the picture is in music, the picture is in dubbing. And then we sent them 2 invitations to the world premiere.
Well, effects are done very simply, but they're really effective. I mean, why is it you think other people spend so much time and money doing things that often don't look as good?
I think it's the same syndrome for all low-budget filmmakers. They just don't have the money to do it right, so they've got to do it. They've got to sit down and figure it out. Well, how can I make somebody float? Well, something has to lift them up. Well, what's going to lift them up? Wires? I don't have wires thin enough, nor do I have a rig to mount to the ceiling of this place. What else? So I think it's just common sense.
So do you think as you move into a bigger budget that you might lose some of your common sense and start?
Yeah, I think that happens. I think you suddenly say, how can I get someone to float? An anti-grav disc. How much will it cost to make an anti-grav disc? I think that is a danger.
How did you go about getting a distribution deal?
Rob Tappert, Bruce Campbell, and myself went to the home of distributors, New York first, and we crashed on people's floors. And I remember one place, we didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room or a motel room, so Bruce called this girl that he knew liked him. Say, Betty, I'm gonna come by your place. I'm in town. Oh, great, come on by, Bruce. Hey, can I stay the night? Sure, I'd love it. She was coming on to him in Detroit. So Bruce shows up at her door. She opens it. Bruce, Rob and I are there. Hello, we're here too. She went, oh, you're all here. Okay, come on in. You can stay the night. So it was a nightmare to use this woman's apartment. We had to dupe her, first of all. And then Rob and I would hear this horrible struggle going on in the back room. This apartment was no bigger than this room. Her advances on Bruce. Meanwhile, I was trying to fall asleep, pretending it didn't exist. She had 6 cats in this apartment. Not that I was in any position to complain, mind you. I'm just saying that when I awoke, I slept in a bed of cat hair. When I awoke, my face had all puffed out. It was a nightmare. We'd ride the subways with our film cans in hand, show them to distributors in screening rooms, wait outside nervously, drinking coffee, pacing around, reciting the lines that we would say to him about how good we thought it would be, and rehearsing our dialogue. We'd come in when the movie was over. He'd be sleeping, you know. Is it over? So we had a lot of very discouraging experiences. All no's. The UK audience embraced it, and they made it a big hit, along with very good marketing of Palace Pictures, of course. And after that, the United States said, what's that? What's that little horror picture that's doing so well over there?
Regret putting it in?
I do.
On what grounds?
Well, I think it was unnecessarily gratuitous and a little too brutal. And finally, because people were offended in a way that my goal is not to offend people. It is to entertain, thrill, scare, make them laugh, but not to offend them. But, you know, I know a lot of 19-year-olds that are stealing cars and murdering people. Not to make that comparison, but I think my judgment was a little wrong at that time. Rob, do you have a light? How horrible.
Was that her name?
Yeah, how's this look, Ira? Is that window
What was her
burning
name,
not too
Sam?
bad?
Mickey?
Mickey.
And who was the big one? Janet?
I don't remember the other
It's
one.
hot, but is it bothering you?
Beast?
Beastmaster, yeah.
Did you see that?
Did you hear Goodman's joke? Yeah, I did see Beastmaster.
Okay,
That
never
was
mind.
Beastmaster.
I'm talking about Vic.
What'd you say? I didn't like Beastmaster.
Wait, so this guy does it.
There's a raucous atmosphere on this set. I don't like it.
Unlike Jason Miller, who was like a lewd.
It was rolling.
No, they're freaking out.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's not it. Oh. It looked like the mixer for the
Oh, let's
lose it.
Are we about to start this?
McDonald's cup. No. That's set. That's tape.
I can't deal. Sam, when we made Evil Dead, I wanted to do something that. Oh, yeah. I should have brought those blood capsules.
Okay. Ready?
Look, what do you want? Look, I'm a busy man. When I first wrote Down the Shore, can you give the answers in French so we could send this to Patty?
I'm ready. You rolling?
Ready? Action? Thank you. Sam, what are the origins of...
Okay, start.
Go right ahead. Okay. Sam, what were the origins of your... Sam, what were the origins of your low-budget horror movie, Evil Dead?
What do you mean by low budget?
Start now.
Okay.
Quick.
Okay. Sam, how did your low-budget horror film, Evil Dead, come to be made?
Well, I met Robert Tappert at the University of, no. Okay. Robert Tappert and myself, along with Bruce Campbell, all live in Detroit. And we... Oh, shit.
Start out with an easier question.
Sam, could you describe Evil Dead?
Yes, it is a rock'em sock'em roller coaster ride of screaming horror.
When you set out to make the film, at what point did you say anything goes?
Well, we never really said that. We wrote the screenplay, and then it was pretty intense. A lot of things in the screenplay, were very intense, and we just went about and filmed them, really.
So that it was your intention from the beginning to make a brutal, savage horror film.
Yes. No, not to make a brutal, savage horror film. We wanted to make Robert Tappert, the producer, and myself, and Bruce Campbell wanted to make a film that would definitely entertain the horror crowd. Because we had sat in on a lot of drive-in movies and a lot of cheap horror theaters in Detroit during shows, and sometimes, most of the time, we would watch films and they didn't deliver enough. That's what we felt. So we wanted to make one that would really knock them with a punch.
There are a lot of filmmakers that work out of the New York, LA mainstream, the regional filmmakers like Romero in Pittsburgh. Renaissance Pictures, your production company, is working out of Detroit. What are the advantages of regional filmmaking?
Well, for us in Detroit, it was certainly possible. I can't say easier because it's the only place I've done it, but it was possible for us to raise money out of the city. And possibly it is an advantage to live there because when we went to people knocking on doors and showing them a short version of the film we intended to make for money, they were still struck by the novelty of the thing, not having lived in a film production town. So it could have been a great advantage, the fact that we were asking for this money in a place that they don't make films. We were able to get it, certainly. So I think that living in Detroit had a lot to do with it, because of that, and therefore, and how. But also, the unions in Detroit aren't quite as far as I know. I've only made it one non-union picture, but they aren't as intense or powerful, and they won't slash your tires, or they won't do any horrible things or make you act or have men on your sets because it's just not that strongly organized. So as an independent, it's easier to sneak through their net to make a picture.
To raise the financing for the film, you made a Super 8 pilot for the picture.
Right. Before we made Evil Dead, we made a Super 8 pilot called called...
Take it from the top.
Okay.
Before we made Evil Dead.
Before we made Evil Dead, we made a Super 8 pilot of the film we intended to make, and that was called Within the Woods. And what I did was took the screenplay for Evil Dead, took a number of the elements from it, and wrote a very short story. We filmed it, and it ran about 30 minutes, and we used it to show the investors exactly what kind of film they'd be buying into, because we had no track record, and they needed some sort of tangible proof that we could in fact make a movie of professional quality.
Yeah, how old were you when you directed the film?
I was Rob, how old was I? 20. I was 20 when I directed the film.
And the people that worked on the production were all also in their early 20s, right?
I think I could have been 20 or 21, I'm not sure. It was already 2 years ago. But yeah, I could have been 20 or 21. The people who worked on the film, David Goodman, who is also working on this show, strangely enough, and Tim Philo, the man behind the camera there. Tim shot the picture, and David Goodman was the transportation captain, and Robert Tappert, over there, was the producer on the film. They are all in their 40s. No, they're about, on the average, about 26 years old. So it was a very young group of guys getting together and really pitching in everything they could to make the thing.
You shot the picture on location in Tennessee. What were the conditions like?
The conditions in Tennessee for us started out okay, but they became extremely difficult. When we got down to Tennessee, the Tennessee Film Commission, who had been scouting locations for us, told us that day that the cabin we intended to shoot in had dropped through. The location was no longer available. So we stalled, and we were shooting everything else but what took place inside the cabin. And like 90% of the picture takes place in the cabin, so we were really stalling. We finally did find a place. It was an old place in this little valley surrounded by miles of woods near Morristown, Tennessee. And this place this area had been used as grazing land. In fact, these cows and cattle had knocked down the door of this place, and there was about 6 inches of cow dung. And we had the cameraman and the production assistants and everyone was just shoveling out cow dung for a week, and we ripped out walls, tore out the ceiling, made a studio out of the place, and it worked out very well finally, that locale.
Tell the story of the cabin, the horror story.
The horror story? Well, it's funny you should say that, John, because there is in fact a little known horror story that takes place in the cabin that we shot Evil Dead in. This cabin was built about 100 years ago, and the man who built it died maybe a week after he built the place. And it's located in this valley surrounded by these mountains that have an incredible amount of iron ore in them. So that during thunderstorms, most of the lightning bolts are attracted to this valley. So it's really an incredible thing to see when you're there during a storm. Well, no one lived in this cabin for the next 20 years. And it was probably around 1910 or so when a family of 3 moved into the place. A mother, daughter, and a grandmother. So really 3 generations of women. One night during a thunderstorm, this little girl woke up and she was scared by all the lightning happening around the cabin. So she ran into her mother's room, and pulling back the covers to climb into bed with her, she found that her mother was dead. Well, she was so frightened she ran screaming into her grandmother's room, and somehow that same evening she had died also during the night. And they still don't really know why both of these women would simultaneously die in this place.
Well, the little girl ran out into the storm about 4 miles to the nearest farmhouse through this raging thunderstorm out through the night, and they found her screaming, banging on their doors, and they brought her inside and they got the story from her. Well, they took care of her after that, and no one lived in the cabin since. This woman, this older woman, during thunderstorms, after that, I mean this younger woman who is now an older woman, but the little girl, Sally. It's really a scary story if you can get to the end of it. The people at the farmhouse raised this little girl. She had never been the same since, and during thunderstorms, she would oftentimes wander off from this cabin, and they would find her wandering around in the woods. And sometimes, well, here's where we come into the story. The Tennessee Film Commission said, yes, we've got this one cabin that's the cows have knocked down, it's full of dung, but you can use it. But it's haunted. And we said, well, that sounds fun. So we went there. As we were shooting, the fella from this farm came by, and he told us the story of exactly what happened and how his folks had taken in this little girl who is now a very old woman, and that because there had been this thunderstorm the night before, he was looking for this woman because it's possible she had returned to this cabin. And as far as we know, they never found the woman while we were down there shooting, and she could still be roaming those woods around Morristown, Tennessee. The strangest part of the story is that a week after we left the cabin in Tennessee, as reported by the Tennessee Film Commission, a bolt of lightning hit the cabin and it burned to the ground.
In Evil Dead, you achieved a lot. In Evil Dead, you achieved a lot of camera movement in that kind of rugged terrain. You could talk a little bit about that.
Well, the fact that we shot the thing in 16 millimeter gave us an incredible amount of movement. Rob's saying I shouldn't mention 16 millimeter. Why?
It said it was 16 millimeter film blown up to 35.
Well, it's still. You don't want to hear 16 millimeter?
Well, it was. It's obvious that it's a 16 blow up. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But not to someone going in to the movie.
I think with 16 millimeters, down fine.
Okay, okay.
I might say it was blown up. I'm going to ask you about that later anyway.
How about if I say, because of the lightweight equipment we had down there, it enabled us to move the camera around a great deal with very little difficulty. And Tim mounted the camera on this board, what we call a shaky cam. And we had different versions of it. One was about this big. And with it, the cameraman can run very fast, and the camera's in the middle. And it absorbs a great deal of the shocks, as opposed to holding the camera like this, where it's a little more difficult to keep smooth. Also, we had a longer version of this thing. This is for the shots of this creature that is rushing through the woods. It lies sleeping until these college students disturb it. And to get the effect of it roaming the woods, we used this thing, the shaky cam. The other version of it was about a board 15 feet long. We had 2 men, 1 on each side, camera in the middle, and it would act like the middle of it was the axis point. So they could move as much as they wanted, but this point in the middle would move very little. And with these different devices, we were able to move the camera around in strange and hopefully new-looking ways.
The special effects in the movie are quite elaborate. Who designed them and
Well, we had really 2 different effects men. They were broken up into categories of makeup effects, and that was Tom Sullivan, and then optical special effects, which is Bart Pierce. Tom did all the things with taking molds of the actors' faces, putting on the actual makeup, creating the masks, and building the creatures when we would have dummy shots. And Bart took care of the mats and worked with the stop-motion animation. And all through the final meltdown sequence, Bart and Tim and Tom Sullivan worked together for 9 weeks just shooting stop-motion animation.
with the use of mats and split frame animation, and it was just a very intense effects experience. What was the question? I gotta answer shorter. I'm just getting blown away.
Is Rob distracting you, standing right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe you can stand behind the
Rob,
camera?
would you?
After raising the money for the film, shooting the picture, then you came to New York for post-production.
Yeah.
What did you find when you were going around looking at some of the post-production facilities? How you were treated, obviously, a young filmmaker coming in with a low-budget picture?
Treated with a great deal of curiosity and friendliness, really, because at that time we were shopping around for the best editor, the best place to do the mix, the best place to rent rooms. So people treated us in a very straightforward and business-like way. I think they realized that we were serious, so age didn't really become a factor at that point. Actually, it was not difficult. The fact that I was very young, did not put a hindrance on any of the production, I felt.
The sound effects track on the film is elaborate, to say the least. Who was responsible for that?
A fine sound editor by the name of Joe Macefield, and he did all our sound cutting. He came up with the most incredible sound effects, from Kandarian plotzing to pigs being slaughtered. It was incredible, really, the amount of effects that he could come up with. And we had long discussions during spotting sessions about the type of sound and the effect we wanted to achieve and how to harmonize these creatures' voices to make them sound unearthly. Along with our mixer, Mel Zelnicker, who is really very talented. He's worked on an incredible number of Hollywood pictures. And in
such films as?
Mel Zelnicker has worked on such films as Reds, Ragtime, boy, more than I can mention, but he's got a slew of experience behind him. Joe cut the sound here in New York in an editing room, 1600 Broadway. And that was a nice experience because I got to meet Brian De Palma for the first time, who I greatly admire. And in fact, I played him in video games. I hate to say this. And I really beat him kind of bad, twice. But he was very nice to me too, because I think he knew how hard it was to make a picture. So he understood.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to give a brief synopsis of the story.
Okay.
The film is about.
Evil Dead is a film about 5 college students that go up to this small cabin in the mountains of Tennessee. And there they find an ancient book and a tape recording of a man, both left there by this man, a professor, who had gone to this cabin to study these artifacts on this dig that he had been on in what would have been ancient Samaria. And the tape recording that they find is a journal on exactly what this book is. And in fact, it's the Book of the Dead, a book of do's and don'ts dealing with the deceased. It's got burial passages of the Sumerians and ancient incantations for resurrecting the dead. And he warns on this tape that these things shouldn't be tampered with. But in his quest for knowledge, he goes ahead anyways. And he unleashes these evil forces. And in fact, they're still there as these children are one by one terrorized by it. It comes from the woods, this dark and brooding entity, and surrounds the cabin that they're in, and one by one it possesses them and their eyes go white, and they're jerked about like marionettes, and they're forced against one another. And it's a love story. No, it's not a love story, but it's a lot of fun. I don't want to give away the shock ending, but we try to make it as scary and as fun as possible.
A lot of horror films are criticized for their assault on women, their have sex and die motifs. Evil Dead is not like that. In Evil Dead, everyone gets it.
Right.
That's true. Everyone does get it. In fact, in Evil Dead, we tried to make a tried to elevate the role of women in film so that they wouldn't totally be stereotyped as the victims. And I look at it as a blow for women's liberation in horror in the sense that they became the monsters in this picture and they terrorized the men.
There's a powerful scene in the beginning of Evil Dead where a girl is raped by the spirits of the dead. Why did you do that, Sam?
Good God.
No, how did you do the effects for that scene?
The effects in the vine attack scene? Actually, they were really very simple. It is backwards motion, and we took these very elastic type vines, wrapped them around Ellen Sandweiss's limbs, and pulled the vines off, and played backwards. The vines appeared to leap to her arm and wrap themselves around her.
When the film was finished, then you then took it to an agent named Irvin Shapiro,
right?
Who has quite a long track record in the business. What was that like talking to Shapiro?
An incredible experience. He, in my opinion, he's the smartest man in the business, really. He's been in it the longest that I can think of anyone being in the thing. He got his start in the business doing publicity for Eisenstein's Potemkin. That's how long he's been working in films. And it was really a great honor to be able to be with him and work with him, to see how he works and try and tap into all his knowledge. He's really got an incredible history behind him. And he's really got a very good sense of humor. So that really helps when you're doing something as serious as trying to sell your first film.
Tell the Einstein story, like, briefly. You know, the Einstein story with him? Eisenstein.
Oh. That's not really right, John.
No?
No, that's not really what happened. What happened was, this was a mistake he made.
Okay.
He misphrased that. It's a non-existent story.
Okay. Stephen King saw the film at Cannes and did a rave review of it for Twilight Zone. How did King come to see the film, and talk a little bit about him?
Well, the film that he wrote is Creepshow recently, and Irvin Shapiro was handling the overseas sales for that picture, along with Evil Dead. So we had the same publicity agent at the Cannes Film Festival, and he was there to promote Creepshow, and I came to promote Evil Dead. And I met him briefly because we had the same press agent, so we were together much of the time. And he surprised me by seeing Evil Dead. I was very happy. What happened? Oh yeah, he saw the thing. And then I heard that from some kids that were sitting next to him, yeah, you know, Stephen King really jumped during Evil Dead. I said, great. Boy, that's wonderful. So when I got back to Detroit, I called him up and I said, Mr. King, is it possible to get a quote from you to say, yes, I really liked Evil Dead, if that's what he felt about it. I said, could I get a quote from you? And he said, you know, I would like to actually write a review on Evil Dead for Twilight Zone magazine, and you can lift the quote from there. So I said, great. Boy, that would be wonderful publicity, thanks. So he came out with that review, and he's really very nice to he was very nice to me, anyways. It certainly will help us a great deal, I think, that review. And it has helped us.
Evil Dead has won many awards in Europe at various festivals.
Well, we've taken Evil Dead around to different horror festivals overseas, and we have won some awards. We won the Sitges Festival Best Picture Award and Best Special Effects there. That's in Spain, and we took it to the Canuck Heist Festival in Belgium, and we won the Best Picture Award. And we went to the Paris Festival of Fantasy, Horror, and Science Fiction, and we won first prize of the jury and first prize of the public. These are great little awards. They're like bowling trophies, only not as big.
Talk a little bit about Bruce.
Oh yeah. Well, there's three of us actually who formed the company that made Evil Dead. Bruce Campbell, who stars in the picture and is also one of the executive producers. Robert Tapper, who's the producer, and myself. And Bruce is first and foremost an actor, a performer. He was in all the high school plays that we were in high school together, and he was in all the plays there. And he went off to college for a short time, studied drama only, and still acts in dinner theater groups and a soap opera in Detroit currently, and now he's going to be doing a sitcom, and he'll be starring in our next picture entitled Relentless. It is a crime movie. Relentless is the next film that we intend to make. It's a crime story. It's a story of a man who tries to plan the perfect murder. And in fact, he does carry off this perfect murder, but the murder that he's planned turns out through a strange series of coincidences and mistaken identities. The murder turns out to be his own. So...
Well, now we don't have to go see the film, Sam. Thank you for telling us.
I won't reveal the shock ending, however, to that film either.
Okay, let's go back and you describe some of the conditions, some of the horrible conditions on location.
Oh, yeah.
Like
well,
shooting in the swamp, etc.
Right. The place was miles really from civilization, so it was very difficult to get a truck in there to hook up power, but we did it. We couldn't afford to bring in water, obviously, so we didn't have any running water. All the water had to be brought there down this mile-long mud road. It had turned to mud soup. So when it got very cold in there, because we didn't have any heating system except a fireplace, there was really no way to warm up. There was no warm water for anything, and the whole place eventually got covered in Caro syrup blood. And it really gets sticky because there's so much blood in the picture, and bile and green, red, blue, any color. The whole place eventually had a coat of sticky Caro syrup over it, everything. And anytime you wanted to touch the camera, you had to turn on the coffee machine, because we had enough water for a coffee thing, and wash your hands in this scalding coffee. I remember doing that many times. It was horrible. And then grab the camera, and then you pick up something, damn, and you get the stuff on your hands again. So that was fun. And it got very cold. I think that was the most difficult part about the shoot. One time, in fact, it was so cold that I couldn't stand the slow torture of freezing to death so slowly. So I actually crawled outside and laid down to die in the cold. But Rob, the poor bastard, covered me with a blanket. And here I am today.
Could you describe the feeling after eating Goody's chili?
David Goodman's chili? I have to warn all professional filmmakers that David Goodman, a transportation captain on Evil Dead, made a chili that is deadly. It is very difficult to consume. He also made us things such as chocolate pizza, which I don't recommend. Many delicacies unknown to this planet.
Okay, you shot the film in 16 and then had it blown up to 35. What was that process like?
Right, the film was shot in 35. No, very difficult. I didn't really enjoy dealing with the laboratories for that whole process, and it didn't really turn out to save us any money. But I was very happy with the final result. I thought it looked as good as any 35 picture, and I don't think that the audience will be able to tell the difference. It doesn't look Hollywood slick like Friday the 13th or anything like that, but it has its own ambience, I think, that works for the picture.
What are some of the more recent horror films that you've enjoyed?
Creepshow? I really enjoyed that. I'm trying to think of others, they don't come to mind, but Creepshow for me was a lot of fun. Really, I haven't enjoyed a bunch of the horror films lately. Oh, I like The Thing.
Are there any directors in particular that you really admire or emulate?
I really admire The directors who I really admire are, as unfashionable as it may be, is Steven Spielberg, Kubrick, Hitchcock.
What do you think, for you, what was the biggest problem for you in making the film? If there's a single thing you could single out as a low-budget filmmaker.
The single thing that I could single out? The most difficult thing? Was, the most difficult thing about making the film was when we'd reach stretches where we would run out of money and having to stop for 3 months, whatever we're doing, and put on our suits again and get our briefcases out, our matching briefcases, and cut our hair short and shave and look presentable again and go around knocking on doors asking for more money. And getting the names of people trying to get names of people who you could at least ask for money, that was the most difficult part, the waiting, I think. The inactivity of the process.
What were the Paris audiences like when you showed them Evil Dead?
The Paris audience at the Rex Theater, which is the oldest theater in Paris, giant place, they went crazy. They're out of their minds. They throw paper airplanes. You go up on stage, they throw tomatoes at you. They confiscated a gun from some fellow when I was there. And one time, from the balcony, they threw a whole bucket full of razor blades down at the crowd. It's really an insane audience, and they start these cheers together. Arrivé, arrivé. I don't know what they mean, but they're saying something. And it's in French, too. And they're just wild. They go crazy. They scream things back at the screen like every movie is a Rocky Horror Picture Show. They really are a die-hard, fun-loving horror crowd.
What kind of demands were made on Bruce Campbell, the star of the film, on location down there?
Incredible demands were placed upon Bruce while we were shooting the picture. For about 80% of the film, he's covered in blood, and it keeps becoming more and more and more blood. And since we shot things out of continuity, he would have to remember for different scenes exactly how much he had on him. Sometimes half his face would be covered in blood, sometimes there'd just be a few drops. And we had no continuity person, so he had to take care of it all himself. Also, this blood is, I can't really explain to you how horrible it is. It's basically the substance similar to maple syrup. And this stuff dries and hardens, and it starts pulling your hair. If you move, it sticks to your clothes. Ugh, and it hurts, and his whole body was covered in it. And he always had to be in this blood. And this is at like 15 degrees Fahrenheit all the time. So not only is he covered in maple syrup, but he's freezing to death. And this suffering that he was going through probably didn't hurt his performance on the screen, where he's suffering and cold and going schizo-paranoid in front of these, surrounded by these horrible creatures. In fact, some of it even probably comes out in the film.
How did you do let me rephrase that. What was the most difficult scene for you to shoot?
The most difficult shot for me, personally, in the picture was, it's a track beginning upside down, and it goes over Bruce Campbell's head, and then the shot ends right side up. And for that, I had to be hanging from the ceiling by this, what do you call this, underneath your knee, on a rafter. And so I was actually hanging upside down with the camera like that. Bruce walked toward me, and I had to actually pick my body up with my legs and then come back down. It's very difficult to explain, but it's actually what happened. And that was the most physically difficult shot. We had a weird experience that we were shooting the very first shot of the movie. Tim Fowler, the cameraman, and myself went to this field to get a very long shot. We were using a telephoto lens of this bridge that the car is crossing. The kids are coming up to the cabin. Well, the whole field was filled with cows, and there was one bull. And it wouldn't let us into the field. There was a barbed wire electric fence, and you had to crawl under the thing, but the thing wouldn't let you get anywhere near its cows. So we had one of the production assistants sing to this bull, to distract it, and we snuck around another section of the field down this hill where the bull couldn't see us, snuck under the fence, passed the camera gear through, set up the shot. We were starting to just shoot. The bull is coming, the bull! We heard some screaming, and what he was screaming was, the bull is coming. And that means that there's a bull coming towards you. And we looked up on the hill, and there was a bull charging us. Well, I don't have a good story about grabbing the negative or anything like that. I just ran for my life, and he chased us around trees, and we couldn't get out because the fence was electrified. It's not something you can like grab and climb over in a minute. You have to actually stop and crawl under this thing. It was a nightmare. But we survived.
Where did you find the actors?
The actors for Evil Dead were recruited out of Detroit, mostly out of the commercial business. Some were in dinner theater, and they had been making documentaries and industrial films, and we had a little audition, and we whittled it down to finally the 4 people that we needed besides Bruce. One of the girls, Ellen Sandweiss, who plays the female lead in the picture, I went to high school with her also. So Bruce, myself, and Ellen all knew each other, and really all we had to cast for were the other 3 parts.
Visual style.
What visual style were you going for? Describe the visual style.
The visual style. While I was shooting the picture, I wasn't particularly after any visual style. Just wanted to put the camera in a place that would best get across that particular piece of information for that particular shot. So I was just hoping that I would take into consideration, 1, what's the best way to see the object, 2, will it cut with the shot before and after it, and 3, is the placement of the camera or the movement of the camera, whatever the camera is doing, zooming or craning up or down, is that the same feeling we want to get across with what the image is? Are they one and the same, or is it helping the image? And based on those questions, those factors determine where and how the thing was shot.
How do you get a shock from an audience? Let me rephrase it. How do you shock the audience?
I guess it can be done all sorts of ways. But what I did in Evil Dead is try to, what I think everyone must try and do, basically, and that is build up some amount of suspense or fear on the audience part that something is going to happen, not exactly letting them know when it's going to happen, and then letting it happen in force, so that they get on the edge of their seats and you hit them. And sometimes you can hit them twice or 3 times, and sometimes you can get them on the edge of their seat, and then pretend that nothing's going to happen, so they go back down, but they're still tense, and then you hit them with a shock. And that's instead of a slap to the face that they're braced for, that's like more like a punch to the stomach. It's weird, but it actually is assaulting when shocks hit you. It is for me when I'm in the audience. I look at it like, ugh, like, ow. You know, it's almost like pain. It's a thrill, you know.
What was your aim in making the film?
Well, the aim in making Evil Dead was to entertain the people. Really to entertain them. And the reason why it was a horror film was because we felt that it was the most easily marketed type of picture we could make. We always knew that there's a circuit for horror films. They always seemed to be playing. And that had a lot to do with the decision to make Evil Dead. Also, in one of the Super 8 comedies that I had made, we had a point where there was a scare, what you were talking about, a shock where someone jumps out and grabs someone. And during the comedy, the audience really jumped. And I thought, boy, this is great. This is kind of a new thrill. So I started writing horror stories as opposed to comedies, just because it was a different way to entertain people, and I had fun with it. So that factor, and the fact that there was always a market for horror films that we were aware of, we pitched in and made this picture. We tried to make it funny too, though. It's a comedy and a horror movie. Two movies in one.
Are you going to make a sequel to Evil Dead someday?
You know, I wrote a sequel. I wrote the outline for a sequel. I have it. And it really depends on, I can't say it was originally written as a trilogy or anything like that, But it depends on the fact that if it... Well, let me start over. I wrote a sequel. I've got the outline for it. But whether it's ever made into a movie would depend on whether Evil Dead makes money. It would be a financial decision. It should be a lot of fun, this sequel. It's got a lot more stuff in it, and it moves in a different direction than Evil Dead, but it should be just as entertaining and funny, I hope.
How have audiences reacted to Evil Dead?
Very well. We've been very lucky with this picture. They probably are only reacting well so that they can have grounds to hate our next picture all the more, I imagine. I don't know, but I think they're entertained. I think they like it. You're asking the wrong guy, though. You probably should ask someone on 42nd Street, see what they think. Because that's really the horror crowd there. The 42nd Street crowd in New York and the crowds in Detroit, downtown Detroit, and in Paris, as it's of all the crazy places that I've seen that really have this love for the horror film, and they want to be scared, and they want to scream things, and they want to really take part in a fun, scary, jumpy, thrilling experience that doesn't really hurt anyone, but at the same time they can have all the fun of a hockey game, and all they're out is $3.50.
Do you see it? Do you see the horror film diminishing at all?
Well, there was certainly a in the market. Okay, as far as people saying the horror film diminishing, in the marketplace, certainly there was a glut of them about 2 years ago and last year, and now they seem to be making a lot less of them. And people aren't spending as much money to go see the horror films now as they were. But I think there'll always be a market for them. There always has been. So there's no reason to think it'll stop. But yeah, I think that big flush of horror films and love of horror films that we just had the last 3 years is on the downslide. I don't know what the social reasons or what goes through people's mind why they would want to see horror films more at one time than others, or the majority of people would. But it seems like they're not making as many and people aren't paying as much to go see them. I think if you take a look, though, actually, at the films that are glutting the market, they're really they're really not that new. They're recreations of the ones that have made money, and people, when they say it's on the downslide, they're only. I think what's really happening is people don't want to see the same film that they saw twice before, and so that they won't go see that horror film, or they won't see a number of horror films because nothing new is presented in them. So part of it is the fault of the filmmakers. I hope Evil Dead is different enough that they will go and see it.
Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert lashed out against horror films about a year ago. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction to those guys lashing out? As far as Gene Siskel and Robert what's his name? Ebert lashing out to horror films. I don't know. I think that they're unjust because many times, at least twice, I've heard those gentlemen, I don't know who, say on their program, and now the dog of the week, and the dog comes out, here's Fido. That's okay, that's cute, but they say, now this is a film that I had to walk out after 5 minutes. It was so bad. And at that point I say, basically you shouldn't be reviewing it then, because if you've only seen 5 minutes, you don't know what the film's about. Give the filmmaker a chance because it's so difficult. Well, I don't want to get into a sob story, but obviously the filmmaker has put a lot of work into it, a number of other people, and this fellow is saying it's no good. He's only seen 5 minutes. If someone only saw 5 minutes of Evil Dead, if it was great or if it's bad, I'm not saying, but if they only saw 5 minutes, I don't think that they could get a very clear idea of what the film is about. So any reviewer that states that, for me, even once, is coming from the wrong direction. They're not giving it a chance. They're not going to the theater wanting to like something, wanting to see its good points. They just want to get a quick impression of what they think it's going to be like and then extrapolate from there. And I don't like that.
Rob, is there anything you want me to touch on?
Yeah.
Tim? Sam?
I can't think of anything.
Okay, Ira? Okay, wrap it up. You sure there's anything else?
Yeah, I would like to say one other thing, and that is that Steven Spielberg owes me $5, and I've been calling him about the thing. I've been asking him for it. I don't know why I can't get it, because I need that money. And Steve, you think you'd come across with that $5? No, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, John. It was a pleasure being on the show.
The film has already been released in the UK and was cut by the BBFC. There is a lot of controversy surrounding this film, as we can see from this clip.
Cheryl?
Those girls were watching a scene from a horror film called Evil Dead 1, which broke all financial records in the cinema and as a home video when released 4 years ago. Yet it was attacked by some as being no more than a video nasty, and the Department of Public Prosecutions took court action to ban it. The action actually failed, but the arguments will rage again when its sequel, Evil Dead 2, hits the cinema screens next week. Its American director Sam Raimi is with us tonight, and we're also joined by Gerald Howarth, who would like to see films like that banned. Sam, let me just ask you first of all as to why it's important to show people being dismembered. There was actually a scene in Evil Dead 1, I don't know if any of our audience has seen it at all, but of a woman being raped by, of all things, a tree. Now, how necessary is it to have those kind of scenes in horror films today?
Well, I don't think it's necessary specifically to have any particular type of scene in a horror picture. There is a particular sequence in the woods with a woman where the trees come to life and she is attacked by them, it's true. And
she was raped by them, by the looks of things.
Well, you don't really see anything, so it's really up to the imagination of the viewer.
I actually watched the film today. I was told to watch it today. It was pretty clear to me what was going on.
Well, okay. Well, it's there was a scene in the picture that did have a sequence of a woman in the woods, and her clothes were certainly torn off, and it was a fantasy, and I don't think that I personally would repeat that sequence again had I the chance to rewrite the picture, but I wrote it when I was 18 years old.
Where on earth did you get the inspiration from at that age to do that kind of thing?
To write horror pictures specifically? Well, I've always enjoyed horror movies, and I've always enjoyed a good horror book, being scared. I think a lot of people enjoy that, so I just decided to give it a shot myself.
You still seem to have in that film an obsession with mutilating the human form. I mean, is that what's necessary these days to bring the thousands of people into the cinemas to watch that kind of movie?
Actually, Evil Dead is a story of demonic spirits, and it's really a battle of man versus monster. And it's the monsters that are attacked and destroyed and dispatched in the Evil Dead pictures.
Let me bring in Gerald Howarth. We'll talk about the fact that you tried to get a private members bill through to stop that kind of thing being seen on the screens. Is there a place, do you think, anywhere in British cinema for films like Evil Dead 1 or 2?
Well, Mr. Raimi says that it's a film that was designed to show the goodies getting at the evil chaps. I think that's actually really rather a load of whitewash. I don't think it was at all. I think it was an attempt at gratuitous violence. I hadn't had a look at all its film, but I have seen some of it, and I've certainly seen an extract from Evil Dead 2, I think it's called. And it strikes me as the rather true-to-life pictures of people vomiting blood and blood all over their face and their bodies mutilated. I don't think actually is the kind of thing that certainly would be shown on video. I think in the cinema, it's a different thing. If adults want to go and see a film which has been passed by the BBFC and classified as 18, where there is some say on who actually goes in to see the films in terms of age. That's one thing. But these things are then become available on video, and they are available in the home. Now, the audience here, when they saw the films tonight, the extracts, they all tittered. And I quite understand, because it's absurd. But when you see it quietly, in the confines, as I did earlier tonight, just myself watching it, and some of the gruesome, grotesque and gratuitous violence, simply for the sake of showing violence, when you see that, not only did it make me feel sick, but also it quite clearly is working away at people's sensitivities. The more you shock people, the more it takes to shock them. And that's what we're doing, and in videos, you have no control over who sees videos. Television has a watershed, the cinema has a sort of filter at the gates so that people under the given age don't get in, whereas videos are seen at home. And irresponsible parents, no parents should be responsible, but irresponsible parents leaving these videos lying around for their kids to watch, there is a lot of evidence that this causes direct damage and harm.
Let me find out if anybody's actually seen any of the Evil Dead films in the audience, have they? Anyone at all? Yeah, let me just tell you something. We've got a slight problem. Uri Geller strikes again, I think, because not only did our telephones pack in, but in fact our VT cutting panel upstairs, which means we can only come to certain cameras. So if you're talking in the audience, we can't actually see you, but you're very welcome to chip in at any stage if you'd like to. Can you just tell us what you actually thought of the film?
I thought it was excellent. I thought it was possibly the best horror picture I've ever seen. I think you've got to, when you go to see a horror picture, you're not necessarily going to see entertainment, inverted commas. You're buying a ticket, if you like, for an endurance test. I mean, it's like getting on a roller coaster. You don't particularly want to go round faster and faster in circles, getting nowhere, being scared. But you like being scared, so you go into the picture and you like to be scared.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, actually, because we've only got this camera left. So if I come over and actually stand quite close to... Do you want to say something, sir?
Yes, Andy, I do. Look. There's been a lot of talk about trees attacking people. I don't think there's rape in that scene. I've seen the movie. But I don't remember 1939 people sitting, well, there wasn't television, but screaming on radio, look, the trees came alive and threatened Dorothy, Judy Garland, no less. People are losing their sense of humour. These are horror comics. They're not meant to be taken seriously. I'd be a lot more worried if my kids, when they were young, saw news at 6 o'clock which showed bloody violence in the streets of Belfast, because how can they tell that's just a movie? It isn't just a movie, it's real life. People are just taking this a little too seriously, a little too pompously.
OK, let me bring in the gentleman in the front row, if we can come over here. Again, we've got the only one camera. Jamie Bogle is from the National Viewers and Listeners Association. Now, are we taking this far too seriously?
Well, I think, if I may just say so, about Sam Raimi's film, I think it probably has all the charm and sophistication of a speech by Joseph Goebbels, and about the same sort of social usefulness. I mean, the thing that you've got to bear in mind is that the scenes that we saw tonight are only small excerpts from the film. You haven't actually seen the very worst of it by any means. It's, you know, a great deal worse than that. And to watch it, as Gerald Howarth said, non-stop for some length of time, it certainly does have an effect on one, I think, and this is the thing that we're concerned about. I mean, it's an inescapable fact that the media of any sort, and particularly videos,
is there any evidence at all that though these films
well, I was just going to come to, actually.
Cause harm?
There is a great deal of evidence. I mean, I think that the greatest evidence of all, as far as the media is concerned, is the fact that television and other forms of media must be having an effect on our behaviour, otherwise advertisers, for example, will not pay such vast sums of money in order to advertise on them. So I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind, if you really come down to it, but the fact that all forms of media do influence us in some way. Now, obviously, they only influence us to a certain degree, but if you live on this sort of thing, you have a diet of it, it becomes addictive, it does start to affect your behavior, and there is no doubt that this has happened.
Sitting next to you is a great fan of horror movies. Are you addicted to them, and has it affected your behavior? You've got an Aliens badge on, I see there, and a Dead T-shirt as well.
I've been watching horror films for many, many years now, just purely out of interest to start with, and gradually I discovered that the more I watched, the interest was actually in the effects. That people wanted to see, you know, what kind of monsters would appear in each sufficient movie. I think the problem is that the rating system, which was brought up earlier for films that you can go to in the cinema, I'm just going to sit down
because we've got the cameras back now,
is already extended to videos, so that you can go into a shop and every video now has an 18 certificate if it's either a horror or a sex movie. So I don't think that the same arguments that we shouldn't have videos available like this should be raised. It is up to the retailers who are selling the videos to forbid children under the age of 18 from taking these videos home.
Yeah, but I mean, the trouble with that is, you see, that if it doesn't matter what age a person is that they go and buy these videos, they are going to be then out of the shop, in which case they're then going to get into the hands of children. It is an inescapable fact. You are going to have that happen. What are you going to do about it?
Let's ask Gerald Howarth. I mean, what can be done to actually stop these things getting into the hands of youngsters who might be influenced by them?
Well, I do think there's a very difficult question that we all have to address ourselves to here, which is the freedom of our friend here to go and watch what he regards as being the equivalent of a relocator. I quite understand, and to a certain extent I would agree with him. But what I don't think anybody who has really looked at this issue seriously has addressed themselves to is the free availability of the video cassette and its intrusion into the home. And we saw those girls screaming at that sudden horror bit, and they were all sort of falling over themselves. But they were all together. They were sort of taking comfort with one another, and that's what you do in the cinema. I remember seeing the Godfather and the horse in the bed scene, and I clutched my girlfriend and my best friend on the other side. But I mean, when you're sitting in your own drawing room, it's a different story, and we do have to address ourselves, I'm afraid, to this difficult question of having these things freely available to children. And I know it sounds a bit nanny state-ish. I quite accept that. But on the other hand, there is, I think, a general view, not just amongst the general public, but also some of the experts, that an endless diet of violence on the box, on the video, is going to have an impact on the children. I mean, at the Toxteth riots, for example, Lord Scarman said in his report that copycat violence was a factor. And I think that every realistic person does accept this. And I rather pose more questions than I present solutions.
Except from Sam Raimi's point of view, that this is really just fantasy in a lot of cases. I mean, what's the new film like?
The new picture is a horror movie also. Of course, it's a continuation of the first Evil Dead, story of demonic spirits that are raised from the ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead, and it's pretty much a ghost and monster picture.
Yeah, but that blood is pretty lifelike. When you see that blood spurting out of their mouths,
but you're saying
it's not the you don't see the old the sort of Hammer movie scene rocking in the background because it's a rather sort of cheap production. I mean, it's all very lifelike, and I think that is a problem. I mean, Sam Raimi himself says that he can't take a diet of
he does say he's getting a bit
longer.
fed up with it, didn't you? Actually, say you're getting a bit fed up with making these with blood.
It's having an effect on him.
No,
From the age of 18, perhaps.
I wouldn't say that I'm through making horror pictures, just that I don't think that I'd put that particular sequence of the woman in the woods, because I didn't enjoy that particular
Would you let your
watching.
kids watch anything at all like this? Have you got any children?
I would rather that they watched horror movies. I'd rather that they lived in a free society where they had the ability to watch those horror movies, rather than in a society...
The Flintstones, I think.
Well, rather than in a society where censorship or a group of people is determining for me what I can and cannot show my children.
Well, can I just make a point there? I mean, this old hoary thing of censorship is absolute nonsense. Censorship is going on all the time, and it's going on in this studio. I mean, for instance, if you take that microphone away from me, nobody will be able to hear a thing I say. That is the kind of censorship that is going to happen, whatever Sam Raimi does. But the point is, we're not talking about censorship, we're simply talking about standards in the media and how the media affects behaviour and the level of social violence, and there is no doubt that it does affect the level of social
There is a
violence.
doubt. There is no...
No, there's no doubt at all, I'm afraid.
What study do you base that on,
There
sir?
are at least 700 or 800 different pieces of independent evidence upon which to base that. But the most common sense thing is what I said before.
Name one.
Advertisers would not spend money, the vast sums that they do on television, if it didn't influence people's behaviour. A continual diet of anything, media or whatever it is going to affect people's behaviour. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, but is
the
there
police
one example?
Recently had a press conference in Brixton, and they said, and I quote, that now knives are used 22 times a week in Brixton, and they said that they are trying to mount a campaign to de-glamorise, their own word, the use of knives, because now the types of knives that are used are not just sort of Boy Scout knives, but butcher's knives and all the rest of that sort of thing, which they've obviously got.
Are you saying that the likes of Sam Raimi? Are you saying that the likes of Sam Raimi is responsible for this directly?
I think that the sorts of films that he makes have a very considerable contribution towards that situation, yes.
my
And I think, therefore, that they are irresponsible films, and with all due respect to Sam Raimi, I think he's being extremely irresponsible in making that sort of a film, and it is behoves us, really, to do something about it.
Let Sam respond to that.
Well, it's possible. I do agree with you that films can influence people.
The US will find out what all the fuss is about in April 1983 when the film gets released in cinemas over there. So I bid you good night, and I will leave you with some behind-the-scenes footage of the making of the film.
Blood me. Scene 68 FB, take 8, sound 1079.
Rolling. Slate it.
Scene 56 HC, take 3, sound 613.
Okay, dart anytime. Again.
You clear?
Yes, sir.
Coming.
Again. Sam, keep your head to the side in the beginning. You know it. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Camera.
Rolling.
Slate it. Scene 56B, take 2, sound 565.
Out, ready, and action.
Okay, rolling.
Slate it.
Scene 56B, take 3, sound 566.
Swivel your body a little more to the right. Yeah, keep your feet pointed where they were, though. Yeah, and action.
Miscellaneous Ellen, take 12, sound 551.
You lied to her. You lied to Linda. Shelley's not sleeping. She's dead. Don't you know the difference? You killed her. You and Scott cut her up with an axe. She's dead.
Rolling. Slate it. Scene 84, take 3, sound 801.
Okay, ready? Big scare. Big sucking sound, and action.
Scene 56J8, take 4, sound 589.
Ready? And action. Your arms, your arms.
Rolling. Slate it.
Scene 101C, take 4, sound 1009.
Action. Roll. Scene 68 NB. Take 2. Sound 1,140. Ready? And action.
Scott?
Yeah?
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna bury her.
You can't bury Shelley. She's a friend of ours.
As she's dead. Shelley's dead. We gotta bury her now.
Camera, roll and play.
Scene 99F, take 4, sound 1018.
Okay. Action.
Roll sound. Okay, scene 56 JB, take 5, sound 594. Okay, ready? And action!
Why have you disturbed our sleep? Awakened us from our ancient slumber. You will die like the others before you. We will take you one by one. All of you! All right.
All right, lower down.
Roll and play.
Scene 68 GF, take 3, sound 1115.
Ready? And wild jerks. Action. One last time, don't move your arm.
Scene 68 FC, take 4, sound 1083.
Under the shirt first.
A lot.
Give him
More
an
than-
easy job.
Don't burn her.
Okay.
And action.
Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had remained on the hot coals, burning my pretty flesh. You have pretty flesh. Give it to us.
Miscellaneous Ellen, take 10, sound 549.
Ha I can't do that forever.
Okay, now I'm gonna cut you.
There you go, Josh.
Good.
Try again. Is my hand in frame?
No. A little bit sloppier, okay? Real good. Again.
One more time.
Don't you want a bunch of blood coming out of the wrist?
Oh, cut. I'm sorry, cut. I have no blood on here.
Rolling.
Camera.
Rolling.
Slated.
Scene 68, FJ, take 2, sound 109.
I thought there was going to be a payday.
Scene 68, GD, take 1, sound 1017.
Wait, is that 07?
1107.
Say it again.
1107.
Double slits.
And quiet, action. You're moving too much.
Okay.
Try and stay right there. Move your head. Keep your right arm. Wait. Keep your right arm towards Josh.
Okay.
Which, this?
Yeah. Towards Josh. Other
Where?
way.
Oh, here?
There, yeah. And
Just
action.
keep it there?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep it back a bit, actually.
Here?
Yeah, action. A little less spasmo. Try and hold your head in the same position. Lift it up a little bit. Lift up your head a little bit.
Am I going too long?
Keep your
Huh?
head right here. And don't move it around so much. You can still do something.
What am I doing wrong?
You're going too spasmo with your head. And try again, just a little less movement. Action. Open your eyes. Open that eye.
Rolling.
Slide it.
Scene 101I, take 4, scene 1034.
Bruce. Yeah. Turn over as much as possible. But try not to turn way over.
Will you
towards
roll
the
over just
light
a little
on
bit
the
this
frame.
way? All right.
Okay, frog on real quick. Okay. Kill it, kill it. Get out and action. Okay, Fogger.
This is insanity.
Bruce, don't turn
trying
that
to
far
hold it
away.
first.
All right.
Just here, just
Like
here,
that?
just here.
Hey,
Get
my
out,
fog's
get
real
out,
good.
work, grab, and action. Frog it. Hold your position, practice. Now we're going to try to
Knock off the excess
Right
talking.
from the spear, right from the spear. And, okay, go, action.
Rolling.
Slid it.
Scene 84 AM, take 1, sound 791.
Ready, and action. Lower with the handle.
Scene 84 AM, take 2, sound 792.
ready, and action. Pusher. Okay. Rolling. Slated.
Scene 84M, take 3, sound 793.
Ready, and action.
Scene 101N, take 2, sound 1044.
Okay, ready?
Who's in the light? Okay.
And action.
Rolling.
Scene 68 FA, take 2, sound 1069.
Get it where you want it.
Wait, are we back
Rolling.
too far?
We're
All
rolling.
right,
No, we're
Fogger.
just here fine. Look in the hair.
All right, action. Wait, move back one more time. Wait.
What do you mean?
Rob Shadow is dancing around.
Okay. Don't move those hands.
Action.
Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get out of the way.
All right, and action. Die. Slated.
Scene 82 XA, take 1, sound 752.
Ready, and action. Okay, start from bottom position, look up and start the song, and then look over to the right. Go through the whole thing with another thing.
We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. Not another peep. Time to go to sleep. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. Not another peep. Time to go to sleep. We're gonna get you.
Crazy laughs.
Over there?
Yeah, go loud and crazy.
Is that not enough light?
Yeah, try again. Wait,
What?
bring it down and try it one more time.
Down here?
Yeah. And action.
Song and everything?
No, just turn up, look at him crazy.
All right.
Action.
4 of hearts. 8 of spades. 2 spades. Jack of diamonds. Jack of clubs.
Okay.
Is that any better?